We're about to uncover 10 powerful ways to fast track your IT career. We're joined by a truly insightful voice in the field, Jonathan Elinsky at LearnQuest. Jonathan, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
All right, thanks. Hello, everyone out on the internet. Um, my name's Jonathan. I have a 30 plus year career in tech. I started when I was basically a little kid still, and like 22 years old or whatever, at SAP. I was very fortunate to get in at SAP at a very young age. I spent 5 years there, left the company working in the kind of like leading the intranet team there. And then bounced around doing a bunch of different things, usually running development teams for the most part for almost my entire career. So I've always been IT adjacent, but in my current role at LearnQuest, I am now the head tech person. So I am now in charge of IT officially for the first time in my career, which is kind of exciting. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So I'm happy to be here and help give any insights that I can from my years of experience to everybody out there.
Let's begin by exploring our first data set, which reflects insight from 100 plus business technology decision makers on their top career goals for the next 12 months. So here's what the data reveals. 34% of them stated gain new technical certification. 20% stated improve soft skills, such as communication, leadership, etc. 17% of them stated expand my professional network, while 13% of them stated advance into a leadership role. And the rest, you can see that on the screen. Let's hear what Jonathan has to say about these findings. And Jonathan, what does this reveal about the distribution of IT career growth opportunities over time?
Okay, well, I mean, it should be probably no surprise to anybody out there. 54% counting the top two things is pretty much just continuing education, which in tech is like an obvious requirement. So anybody that's been in tech for more than a couple of seconds realizes that obviously tech moves really fast. It always has.
Mhm.
And that is a perfect reflection of what people in the know understand about how to exist in tech. So that part's pretty obvious. The growth opportunities thing, of course, though, is an interesting topic because it doesn't, I don't think it always necessarily correlates to what people think, right? Because again, tech changes so rapidly that even the things that um, promote career growth also evolve and change regularly. So there was a really large, strong kick at some years ago about when the certifications became like a really, really popular thing, and
Mhm.
it became everybody was looking for that. I think that has died down a little bit now, and like I said, everything changes so very rapidly. There's various other things now, so that the soft skill one I think has picked up over the years, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So like emotional intelligence kinds of things, and other communication skills, project management skills. Those are less traditionally the camp of technology people, I think, or at least according to the understood preconceived notions. But it's becoming a lot more prevalent now. So those two are kind of spot on in a sense. Very interesting statistic on this chart is the increased salary or compensation is all the way down at 5%, which is usually what
Mhm.
traditionally people are looking for in a career advancement, is
Mhm.
just more pay and whatever. But it reflects the mindset, I think, of the folks out there and their experiences
Mhm.
that this distribution shows. I think it's a very indicative of um, a change in the way technology roles and jobs work these days. So it's good to see that people are becoming more um, tech people are becoming more business company employees than the tech people that live over there, you know. So it kind of reflects that in the progression. So I think it's an interesting distribution. It's kind of spot on.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for that insight. Well, now that we've explored their goals, let's turn our attention to the challenges. We ask the same group of business technology decision makers to share their biggest obstacle currently, that's holding them back into their IT careers. And here's what we found out. Like 27% of them stated it's in unclear career advancement path. 26% of them stated work-life balance concerns. 19% stated lack of relevant skills or certification. And as you can see on the on our screen here, the others stated limited networking opportunities at 6%, that kind of thing. So, Jonathan, does this align to what you're seeing out there? And would you mind telling us what are the three main challenges that hinder IT career growth and how can they be addressed?
Well, I do think it matches a lot. Again, while I said that a minute ago that it's nice to see that tech roles are being a lot more integrated into um, the mainstream company employee kind of an understanding rather than just the tech people. Uh, I don't think all of the mechanics behind that have caught up yet. So, like the number one and the number two, again, um, are going to be no surprise, I think, to anybody on this call. So, anybody that's been in tech probably has experienced certainly the work-life balance concern, no doubt. And then the unclear advancement path is, I think, because of some of this change, right? So, another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit later is that there's a newer understanding of the fact that there's sort of two streams of progression once you get beyond an introductory level role that not everybody is really sure about. Tech people tend to be focused on the tech, and sometimes it's an understanding that if you're going to advance, you automatically mean that you're going to advance into a managerial role, which becomes like a people manager or a business person, rather than the stuff that you are possibly naturally very good at, which is the nuts and bolts of the technology. So that does make it, especially depending on the culture of the company, that makes it very challenging for certain people in certain roles to know which direction they're supposed to go. So again, that comes up later. And one other thing is, it's good to see that only 2% of the company budget constraints for training thing is only at 2%. Uh, Historically, a lot of times, I think different folks, well, again, it depends on the company's attitude, but that has been, I think, a problem. That combined with the work-life balance in historically for tech people is sometimes they don't get the support because they're considered possibly sometimes back office and expenses instead of like revenue generating, so they don't necessarily get the support. But it's nice to see that that's way down at 2% these days from this poll, so that's good to see.
Great. Okay, let me go back to my slide right here. And now, for the highlight of today's session, Jonathan is about to reveal the 10 key takeaways to help accelerate your IT career. So let's check it out.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, hopefully a little bit more of those two prior questions will get answered throughout this set of comments here. So, yeah, first one, of course, is going to be AI. Probably everybody knew I was going to say that. It's not just hype. It certainly is very hyped. It's everywhere now, but it's not going away. It's changing so rapidly and everyone is embracing it so holistically, not necessarily in the safest fashion
Mhm.
or the most effective fashion, but everybody's doing it and it's becoming extremely included in everything everywhere. So again, from a tech person point of view, if you're not kind of on board with that, you're probably going to certainly miss out. So this is going to decelerate your career path if you're not up on AI in some fashion. Again, it's been argued that it's such, I hate to use this very buzzword sounding word, but such quite a paradigm shift that it's like when HTML became a thing or the dot-com era happened and whatever and everything became internet enabled. This has been argued as equivalent to that. So clearly, any amount of training or embracing of AI from an educational point of view, or be able to start saying that you're able to use it and understand how it works in any way, not necessarily
Hmm.
developing, but just applying it anywhere, definitely a way to
Hmm.
go. So, so that clearly is the number one item on my list right now.
Great. Let's see. I see that we have a question from the audience.
Okay.
Will AI play a significant role in IT career advancement in the next 5 years?
I think absolutely it will.
Mm,
Lean into what I was just saying, that I think almost everything is going to be having an AI element. So when you're trying to either move up or get a new job,
mm.
just like everything else, it's going to say, hey, do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do that? AI experience and education or certification, which there's not a whole lot of yet, um, I think will be essential at that point. And if you're going to be at a disadvantage if you do not have the ability to answer yes to those questions about it.
Thank you.
Hope
Let's
that
look
answers
at
the
the
question.
next. Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at the next item.
Yeah, so okay, so this one is I think what everybody probably knows already, that it's the continuing education thing that, like I said, stuff moves fast. Again, if I'm talking to people that have been around a little bit, this is going to be also no surprise, but it's still true. So this is not to say do not be a deep expert in something. Certainly, deep knowledge is super valuable. You just have to be careful of the trap of only knowing a thing, right? You got your mainframe guys out there who are still essential, but different things. I got classic ASP people that are sometimes a little sad that it's finally died, and stuff like that. So keep up with the stuff, which harkens right back to the first one, right? So AI is now the new stuff, uh, in addition to lots of other things that are constantly being the new stuff. So that's sort of the point, is
Mm,
try to stay abreast of what you can. This factors into some other problems like the work-life balance and having too much to do. And I hear your pain out there, everybody. I understand how that goes. The figuring out how to make that work is sort of where the magic happens, I think. And there's a little bit of tips in here about that, I think. So that's number two.
cool. All right, let's look at number three.
And yeah, so I teased this one earlier. Um, so I hope I'm not offending anybody with the general traditional assumptions about tech people, are nerdy, socially dysfunctional tech dudes living in a basement thing. That's
Mhm,
traditionally what a lot of us are thought of as being. And like I said in the beginning, I don't fit that mold. I'm sure a lot of other folks out
mhm,
there don't fit the mold, but it's becoming a lot more understood and acceptable, and even not acceptable, accepted and expected as well, that tech folks are not just nerdy, socially dysfunctional dudes living in a basement, that they actually need to be able to behave and function and interact with lots of other non-tech folks in a much
mhm,
more effective fashion. And yeah, if you can do this and perform this well, um, this is a huge like multiplier in your value and your um, like advancement capability, as far as people will recognize this and be able to rely on the fact that you can function in this way, and that's definitely an advantage as opposed to the lack of this, which would be a clear disadvantage. And maybe like, well, we can't really expect that person to perform in
mhm.
this role because clearly they don't know how to interact with human beings. So yeah, that's what this is about.
Thank you. So we have a question, Jonathan, from the audience. Is there a possibility of depending too heavily on AI and not being able to work outside of AI?
100%, I would say absolutely.
Mhm,
There's a lot of caution, I think, that needs to be kept, and a lot of sort of not skepticism, but just care taken on when and where and how to apply AI and use AI. I
Mm-hmm.
am not one of the proponents of AI will solve all the problems and no one will have a job anymore and we don't have to worry about it because AI will take care of everything, until Skynet takes over and stuff. But besides that, uh, yeah, I think it's definitely a tool, just like every other tool that we've had. Virtual machines became a thing. We had
Right,
to all learn how to deal with virtual machines. It was different, um, but it didn't change fundamentally the fact that we still needed to do things. So, um,
right.
yeah, there definitely is the possibility of relying too heavily on it. It's even analogous to sometimes the idea of when we have our phones and you try to think of a thing and you can't for like 1/4 of a second. People just bounce to the phone, fire up Google or whatever, and ask, what's that thing I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to remember? It's not
Mm,
necessarily the greatest way to go. I mean, it's handy, but we have to make sure that we're also keeping our own value and our own ability to um, think basically, and make
mhm.
critical analysis and not just rely on the AI to do all of that.
Great point. Another question, Jonathan, from the audience. What are the predictions with AI ethics?
That's kind of a pretty wide open context. I mean, I think it depends on if I'm understanding the context of the question, but like conceptually, I think that um, if I'm barking up the wrong side of the tree, I guess whoever asked that, feel free to let me know. But my opinion about that is it's essential. Just like, I mean, we all know that um, there are good ways and bad ways to use technology. And if it's not gated and guarded and been thought about with
Mm-hmm.
governance, then it's going to be more of a problem than a solution. And clearly, there's already use cases that are harmful that need to be considered. So I think um, there's a lot of issues that some people care a lot about and some people
Mm-hmm.
don't care at all about. And that's kind of a weird disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like the idea of the theoretical plagiarism thing of you ask it to do something and it's pulling content that it doesn't necessarily have ownership for or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot of questions that some people, like I said, really think are very important questions. Other folks aren't really concerned about it. So that
Yeah.
disconnect has to get closed in order to, or at least lessened in order for any progress to get made on that. So hopefully the watchdog folks are going to continue to make noise about it and it can get some attention more paid to it. And the companies are trying, I think, at least they're making a significant effort, I believe, to attend to that. And they have these guardrails, as they call them a lot, where they're trying to pay attention to exactly what their tool is and is not trying to do. Um, could it be better and probably a little bit more thoughtfully and thoroughly, proactively handled? Probably. Um, but
Mm.
I think if everybody contributes to continuing to make noise about it, I think it will continue to get attention.
Thank you. I see a comment from our audience, the person who posted that question. He said, thank you. Exactly.
Ah, great. You're welcome.
All right, now let's go back to our fourth item on our 10 takeaways to accelerate your
Mhm.
IT career. It's other soft skills. So tell us a little bit more about this, Jonathan.
Yeah, so this is almost like 3B
Mhm,
or 3 was 4B but emotional intelligence seems to be um like a particularly hot topic because it's I guess had a lot of attention lately, but it's really just one of many skills that is a I'm going to say non-tech skill, um, and that they're all useful, right? So I'm big on
mhm,
leadership. I'm also there's organizational skills and communication skills, and like lots of things are valuable outside of just for the businessy folks, as I put on there. The line I say is the departments are finally becoming more connected and collaborative, in the sense
mhm,
of, like the move of DevOps, even though that's still somewhat in the tech heavy frame, but more interactivity between non-tech departments and tech departments, I think is a trend that is happening more.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for that to work smoothly, um, and this goes back to some other stuff I said earlier, it helps to be able to have the folks in the various camps be able to speak to each other in ways that are
Mm-hmm.
effective, right? The tech folks can't just rattle off tech sounding words and acronyms and blurt out some stuff, and then the
Mm-hmm.
business people have no idea what they're talking about, and then vice versa. That's again like another sort of traditional problem point where like we had business analysts sometimes sit in between and try to translate from one to the other one. Um, I remember realizing that as a job role when I was first at SAP, and I was like, what do those people do, right? But then I realized what they were doing. I was like, they're sort of sitting in the middle as ambassadors between the technology people and the business people. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that's happening less. Not that business analysis is less important, but I think that aspect of it is becoming less important or less prevalent anyway. When it's um, like I said, the tech people and the business people are becoming closer together. So
Yeah.
the soft skills are important for both camps.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more on that item right there. Let's look at the next one. Cross learn.
Yeah. So but this is like again somewhat connected to what I said a second ago. So uh, as much of an understanding as you can of areas that are outside your specific responsibility or specific focus area
Mm,
adds a lot of value, right? So um, if I can relate and empathize and understand the challenges and the activities of someone doing something that I'm somehow involved in or connected to as a tech person, but isn't really my job. Uh, and I can relate with that person and their needs. It makes a huge amount of difference. Instead of, by contrast, if I'm this business person and I need something from the tech camp, and I am just like throwing my hands up in the air, like I guess I'm going to ask them for a thing, and I hope they get it right because they don't understand anything about what I'm doing.
mm-hmm,
Um, that's not a good vibe, right? And it sort of is the reverse of the tech folks. We're like, it's pretty common that a lot of tech folks do their jobs and whatever they do isn't fully understood or even aware by a lot of the folks outside their area. It's not a good synergy. It's like lack of synergy. So this
mm-hmm,
cross-learn thing, even at an awareness level, makes an enormous amount of difference. One is infinitely more than zero. So having an awareness level at least of other areas and other job roles and other responsibilities helps
mm-hmm,
you, I think, generally be much more valuable and marketable in a sense internally and even in from a job interview point of view. So you can say that you are familiar with all these other areas and not just, siloed inside your, I'm a SQL DBA. I only do SQL. I speak and transact SQL. I do nothing but SQL. That's
mm-hmm,
great if you want to be a DBA, but that's also very, very inflexibly siloed. Nothing against SQL DBAs, but um, if you also know lots of other kinds of things, then at least at a minimal level, and you can have a conversation outside of speaking in T-SQL to people, um, then your value becomes like multiplied tremendously to be able to interact with the people that need you to make a database about a thing.
mm-hmm.
So that's what it's about.
Thank you. All right, now let's look at the next item. Number six, it's be louder and prouder.
Yeah. So this goes back to I said a second ago about there's people that necessarily have no idea what you do or how you do it or what it is or that you even are
Mm-hmm,
doing it, right? A lot of people use the, magic word for make make it happen, however it is that you tech people make it happen, right? And that's okay that they don't understand everything that goes on technologically.
mm-hmm,
Um, but it's somewhat having to be your own self-advocate sort of about what you do, right? So what you do might be critical and super valuable to the company, but from a accelerating your career point of view, if nobody knows that. It doesn't do you very much good. So it's okay to um, sort of share that out a little bit, toot your own horn a little bit. It's more than okay. It's kind of sometimes it's essential. So it's hard to do depending on your personal style, right? You don't necessarily want to be announcing like, look at me, look how important what I'm doing is. But you don't have to do it in quite an arrogant way, but to just sort of somehow make sure that the it's not all under the hood and behind the curtain in the secret tech room over there, right? That stuff happens. That also helps in your day-to-day problems and balance with getting tasks, right? Because the more that you share it out, um, an explanation in some capacity of what's behind what you're doing, it
Mm-hmm.
helps the people that are saying, "Hey, go make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Go get it done by Friday or whatever," and they necessarily have no idea what is involved in making that happen. That's also not
Mm-hmm.
a good vibe. It's also not good synergy. It should be that uh, back and forth and understanding helps everybody operate better, right? So it's okay
Right.
to be a little more verbal and explanatory about what's going on with what it is that you're being asked to do. It's not necessarily like unnecessary, I should say. It's not a thing that will make people be like, I don't want to know anything about that. Why are you telling me this? I mean, it
Mm.
could be depending on how you do it, right? They don't need all the technical
Yeah.
details, but they might need to understand somewhat to the level of what the complexity is and what the level of like critical mass the actual thing that they're asking actually has to do with, because a lot of times they have not a clue. And understanding that
Mm-hmm.
helps both folks understand each other and operate smoother. So,
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much, Jonathan. So I see that we have a comment from the audience. This is great.
okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, too, for joining in and, participating on our BeTechly activities, BeTechly events. Now, I see here that we have a question earlier. This is for you, Jonathan. How do you
Okay.
keep your technology skills current?
Well, I'm not going to say that I'm the best at doing that. Um, it's a challenge to be sure. And you have to be willful about it. You have to be conscientious about it because it's very easy for you to be staring at whatever you're staring at and working on what you're working on, and then I don't know how many months go by or something, and you're like, oh yeah, I should have been doing something else, or I should have been reading that, or whatever. So it's difficult, but there are sort of cheat ways to stay abreast of things, right? That you can squeeze
Mm,
in places. So like I know there's a lot of virtual work at home folks a lot now. They're not doing commutes. I
mhm,
am now not doing that for very many years, but I did used to drive back and forth to work like over an hour each way.
mm,
And I would listen to podcasts and audiobooks and things in the car all the time. So
mhm,
being able to stay abreast. There's like these kind of things that we're doing right now. There
mhm,
are a lot of people doing like lunch and learn sort of webinar things. There's like Spiceworks has, newsletters that they send out. There's masterclass stuff you can take. There's podcasts and
mhm,
things you can listen to. Those are the squeeze them in when you can, keep abreast of things way.
mhm,
The other thing is to just be purposeful about it, right? Carve out the time. As long as obviously your company has the culture that allows that, it's very easy to say, sure, work on learning how to do whatever, Microsoft Dynamics, right? If you
mhm,
didn't do that before, right? But like it's very easy to say, it's very hard to do, and you're like, well, sure, I'll just squeeze that in between the 11 other things I'm doing this week. So
mhm.
you kind of have to purposefully make the time, right? So you have to say, well, this
Right,
day I'm allocating this time to do some training, and
right.
there's not a lot of other ways that I found to be able to do it other than to just make it happen in that sense. It has to be very mindfully purposeful for otherwise. you just let it slide all the time unless you're super duper like strong willpower about it, in which case, good for you. But most of us are busy doing whatever we're doing and we're focused on that and we tend to let our own stuff slide, I think. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. So, we have a comment and a question from our audience as well. I have always worked for companies that have given me the time to train and have provided the financial resources for me to grab degrees and certifications. I know many people
Good for you.
now that do not have that advantage. Do you have a recommendation on what platforms or trainings you can take if you are on your own?
Oh boy. Yeah, well, I do work at LearnQuest, so we do a lot of training. So yeah, I mean, there's entire self-paced libraries, right? But I think it's not so much access to the training. There's a lot of available stuff you can get, right? So there's self-paced trainings that one can get that you can read through or not read through, but like um, train through hundreds of hours of stuff, depending on almost anything that you want. I think the trick is more heavily into the making the time and finding the time to do it. It's even harder that way though, because if you're going to take, for example, a scheduled instructor-led class, then it's a lot easier to say, okay, well, you know what? This class is these 3 days. I'm going to go to that class. So you have to make time to be at that class on those 3 days. That's a lot easier than saying, well, now I have this thing that I can do whenever I want. And I have hundreds of hours or dozens of hours to spend to do that. I'll do it when I can. And then takes a lot more willpower to say, okay, well, I'm going to allocate 4 hours Friday afternoon and sign out of work and go spend 4 hours doing that training thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, things tend to take priority. So that's very tough. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the exams and certifications aren't necessarily so bad. The actual they tend to have uh, like training preparatory classes or multiple classes or tracks or study guides or whatever. And then the actual certification itself is a thing that you sort of schedule and do, and then you're done. So
Mm-hmm.
the general training, I think, is harder to force yourself to make time and find time to do than it is something a lot more specifically tactical, like I'm going to get X certification. But I mean, that's my
Perfect.
experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Let's look at the next item on our slide. Find a mentor slash mentee.
Yeah, this one. Okay, so we got into a new area now here, which is I think important that I don't know unless you have been or had a mentor. I don't think a lot of people realize what amount of value comes out of that. So
Mm,
I personally have been fortunate enough to have had several experiences with folks that I have been operating near, whether that's under, like when I worked at SAP. I was very new and very young. It was my first white collar job, or my first tech
mm,
job, and I was in a team full of a bunch of brilliant people. So uh, being able to be around folks that have much more knowledge and experience than you almost can't help but you with like sort of secondhand experience. Having someone to ask questions of or give you tips or whatever is of course super valuable. What is less, I think, generally understood is when you're on the other side of that coin, when you are already an experienced, established
mm,
person, and then you have people that you are the mentor for. That's also tremendously valuable. Obviously, it's not a good fit for every single person, depending on what kind of person you are and what your personality style happens to be. But I wouldn't underestimate the value that comes from it. So being able to help uh, enlighten and train and teach and coach other folks that um, are behind you in their career advancement
mhm,
can provide a tremendous amount of um, personal growth for you. And I think it also demonstrates. Um, value as a member of a company, right? So from a career point
Mm,
of view, it's if you're not already like a manager or higher, but you're maybe a senior developer or a senior tech person, and you're constantly advising and assisting other folks. I mean, that definitely leads right into, well, you know what, this guy's already kind of doing that stuff. He seems like he would already be fine to be in charge of that department, for example, right? It's kind of like a next step. So that is also
mhm.
sort of a career indicator for that direction, assuming that's the direction you want to go, which is one of the extra points coming up here. So we'll get to that at that point.
All right. Let's look at the next item. Stay informed in tech.
Yeah. So this goes a little bit back to that awareness level thing, not just from being trained on other areas of stuff, but that staying abreast of what's new and what's happening. Again, this is probably not super new to everybody, but um, the vibe of the pulse of what's going on in tech is essential. And then, so if you're informed on what's going on and what's potentially coming up, um,
Hmm.
it definitely provides you advantages in multiple aspects, right? So from a personal point of view, if you know what's sort of coming, instead of being reactive about it for your own career direction and training, you can potentially be proactive and be ahead of the game, which is always better. But also from an advisement point of view, if you are knowledgeable about this whole general vibe of how tech is progressing, obviously you become valuable to the business leaders in your company as a technological advisor. So
Hmm.
that's certainly career value add right there too. So it helps on a personal level, as well as like from a sort of reputation kind of a level. So
Okay, we have another question from the audience here. Is it equally important to maintain a focus and goal within your training as you prep for new things?
I think I missed a little bit of what that was. Can you say that again?
Yeah, let me repeat that. Is it equally important to maintain a focus and goal within your training as you prep for new things?
Oh, well, I mean, I think that especially because of how fast tech is, I think if you don't at least maintain one eye on your own training and goals and direction, it's super easy to sort of forget about it. Not quite forget about it, but like by the time you look back at it again, you're like, oh, I'm now 5 more steps behind. How did that happen? Right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it just changes so darn fast. So I don't know that I would. I think obviously it's going to fluctuate, right? So like day to day wise,
Mm-hmm.
or week to week wise, like something's coming up and it's like, hey, this has to happen by this time. Everybody experiences this, right? So
Mm-hmm.
people think we're called on as technology solution providers to make things happen. Sometimes with a lot less warning than we would prefer. So, so at times like that, you're like, you know what? I would love to get that to happen, or I would love to get the server back up, even though it's down right now. But I got to read this book, right? That obviously that's not like realistic, but
Mm-hmm.
just finding the balance that way, where it's gonna sometimes you're gonna be paying attention to everything that's right in front of you because the house is on fire.
Yeah.
But try not to get caught up in that. I think is the point is to minimize the exposure and extensivity of how long you're just staring at whatever you're staring at on today and
Mm-hmm.
then all the way now it rolls into tomorrow and you're still staring at it. That's no good way to go. And then that's where stuff gets lost in the shuffle. And then by the time you look again and you're like, oh, was I supposed to learn that? No, that's not even a thing anymore. I guess I'm gonna learn the next thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the best I can do on that one, I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, let's look at the next item. Get certified.
Yeah, so I had to have this in here. I put it lower on the list. I think that was the number one career advancement thing from the poll, but uh, I don't know that I personally don't find it to be as tremendously valuable from a accelerate your career point of view as some of these other things. Obviously, I put it at 9 because it's on the list. It certainly is valuable. I'm not saying don't
Mhm.
go out and get certifications anymore. I definitely wouldn't be saying that. But sometimes being over credentialed or not over, like credentials are sometimes become a bunch of noise. It's just like you don't want to list every single piece of tiny little software that you know how to use on your resume, right? People aren't necessarily giving too much care to the fact that you know how to use, I don't know, like WSFTP in order to share files. I don't know that anybody's putting that on the resume.
Mhm.
So there's a whole lot of certifications that you can get now, even like tiny little itty bitty ones where you take like 2 or 4 hours of a thing and you get a certification that says you did a thing.
Mhm.
Or a badge or whatever. And, you go to a LinkedIn profile, there could be like 600 badge certification things on your profile. It becomes a
Mhm.
bunch of noise. So, um, specifically tactically valuable certifications, you want to be a, technical project manager, go get a PMI cert. Okay,
Mhm.
sure. That's great. Do that. Um, but and that definitely adds value when you can say, I have been credentialed with this thing, certainly.
Mhm.
Just do it in moderation, I think is sort of what I was getting at here.
Great point. So we have a comment from the audience. Thanks for another perspective and a great answer.
Oh, awesome.
All right, now let's look at the final item on the list, find balance.
Yeah. So this is huge. So this ties together all of the other stuff. As it says, and I've mentioned already, burnout in tech is almost an epidemic. If you
Mm,
stay abreast of any of the forums and conversations of what's challenging tech folks, it's usually that they're working too much or being asked too much of them, or they don't have work-life balance, or and that was on the poll too. Um, and we all know that's very tough. We all know that we're probably overwhelmed, understaffed, underappreciated, understood. Um, so finding balance is tough. So it's on the list because you have to work at it. So if you don't, um, you kind of get destroyed almost, or you can anyway, or run over by it, right? So you can't find time to improve your soft skills. You can't find time to get a certification. You can't spend time as a mentor. You can't stay informed in tech. You can't do any of these things, and also possibly, hang out with your friends. Remember what your wife looks like, stuff like that. Get out,
mm.
get out from behind
Right.
your desk. See what the sun has to say today. So like
Mhm.
if you don't really try to pay attention to it and work at it and fight for it, right? So, resource management is essential. Everybody, all the companies, they don't want to have more resources and pay out more money than needs to be done. So, if you are, I'm a big fan of not being too much of a work superhero in the sense of if you're doing the job that really should be three people's jobs.
Mhm.
Good for you that you can, bad for you that you are. Um, Possibly in a short-term way, sure. Oh, two people left or whatever, and now I'm the only person here doing this job. Well, okay, and you can handle it for the time it takes to replace the other two people. Okay, good for you, but like, don't make that the norm, because it's very easy for someone very far away behind a desk looking at a spreadsheet and say, well, these two people left. We got all these two salaries that we're not paying anymore. And it seems like, John's doing that job. So why do we need to rehire two more people? Meanwhile, John
Mhm.
is losing his mind and his wife doesn't remember what he looks like or something like that. His friends want
Yeah.
to hang out with him and he's like, I'm working. I know it's 9 p.m., but I'm still working.
Mhm.
It's not that great. So, it also, when you become burned out, you start to not do a good job. You don't excel in any of these other areas that we talked about that are valuable, which is going to
Right.
ultimately hurt you anyway. So again, in moderation, maybe, um, you know, work. as much as needed for achieving whatever's in front of you, but don't make it the norm that you're killing yourself. You gotta be a whole person. So there you
Pretty
go.
well said. Thank you, Jonathan, for that.
Sure.
Now, to our audience, I just wanted to say that, Jonathan, this session is incredibly career boosting. It's clear that success in tech doesn't happen by accident. It's actually the result of intentional action, right? So I know
Absolutely.
you probably actually covered this in our session, but what habits or routines do high-performing IT professionals consistently follow?
Well, I would hope that a lot of the things that I mentioned on the 10 items are best practices, right? But there's a
Mhm.
couple that I didn't really mention that are, I don't know, they're less specific to accelerating your IT career and more
Mm.
generically beneficial to just being successful in whatever you're doing, right? So one of them is, for example, being at least moderately organized, right? So I think that if you're doing the everything's a disaster and everything's on fire and I'm doing whatever's in front of me and I'm living out of my inbox and that's it and I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow until tomorrow comes, yeah, you're probably putting out the fire of today, but you're not necessarily in a long-term sense being tremendously successful or progressive, right? You're just sort of being reactive.
Mhm.
Um, as much as you can push the needle towards being proactive instead of reactive is
Mhm.
beneficial. And the last point that was on my list of finding balance, being sort of true to yourself and being
Mhm.
authentic, I think is super important and super helpful. Um, uh, Rely on the people that you are supposed to rely on. If you have people that work under you that is your team,
Mhm.
have a good relationship with them. Don't like just, you know, act like they're your minions to do what you have to tell them to do because number one, they don't appreciate that, and number two, you can't
Mhm.
do it all, right? So lean into their strengths. They're whole people too. You were where they are once. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's enormous. Um, I asked one of the AI engines this
Mhm.
question too, and I was curious to see what it came up with, and it hit a
Mm.
lot of the same things, which is very interesting. So there was like continuous learning, task and
Mhm.
time management, which is the organization thing that I was just sort of talking about,
Mhm.
um, effective communication, taking care of yourself, stuff like that. That a lot of those
Yeah.
things came up on the list. They're all important. Um, One of them is also part of the organization thing is streamlining, right? So
Right.
us as tech people, we have a lot of ability to know how to like automate stuff. So if there's repetitive tasks or things that we can automate or improve or streamline efficiency in, obviously that helps. Getting more done with less effort is always a good
Mhm.
recipe. So that's, I think, a very common um, tool in the toolbox of effective um, tech folks or even business folks. Like the business folks want us to sometimes automate stuff for them. We forget that we
Yeah.
can sometimes automate stuff for ourselves. So, and that's not just like super like sysadmin scripts where you're trying to like, push out automated changes to people's laptops. I mean, this can come up in a lot more daily basis of stuff like automating messaging from project management tools to go out to your development staff, for example, or whatever, instead of having to have a meeting where somebody goes over it like line at a time, right? It's increasing efficiencies in all different kinds of ways
Right.
always helps people become more effective. So that'd be
Yeah.
about where I'm
So,
at.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.